Live NFL trivia every Tuesday night on Twitch at 9 p.m. Eastern. Come show off your football knowledge and have a chance to win cash prizes. Check the link in the description to find out more. And now, on with our feature presentation. A long time ago, I made a video on Mike Borrella at the 1976 Pro Bowl. Borrella might be the worst Pro Bowler in the history of the NFL. He threw 6 touchdown passes and 12 interceptions, was near the bottom of the league in just about every major statistical passing category, and was a bad quarterback by every standard imaginable. Somehow, Borrella got an invitation to play in the All-Star game that year, and I'll leave a link in the description to that video if you want to check it out or refresh your memory. But what you might not know, and what I didn't touch on in that video, is just how close that moment came to never happening at all. I'm not talking about Borrella entering the game, or talking about Borrella getting invited in the first place against all odds. I'm talking about the Pro Bowl being played. We were just a few days away from the game's scheduled kickoff, and there was no clue as to whether or not the game was actually going to happen. Because in 1976, the players threatened to boycott the Pro Bowl, and this is the story behind that. Before I talk about the actual boycott, we need some context as to how the Pro Bowl worked back then, and the main purpose of the game. Yes, there were many reasons why the Pro Bowl was held. It was a way to honor players who had a great season. It was a way for the fans, who didn't really get to see out-of-market players unless they were on Monday Night Football or in the postseason, to see them for maybe the only time all year. It was more money for everyone involved, and was a way for the NFL to stay in the news cycle even after the Super Bowl ended. But from the perspective of the players, the big reason to play the Pro Bowl was pension. The pension plan was created in 1962, and one of the main ways it was funded was through extra games. Back then, practically every single postseason game had proceeds from the game go to the pension fund for the players. It's part of the reason why the Playoff Bowl, which was the league's annual third-place game back in the 1960s, was held. Before that got canceled, that game produced over $1 million to the fund, and the game between the Baltimore Colts and Philadelphia Eagles held in 1967 alone generated over $200,000. It's part of the reason why in 1967, the players, in addition to an NFL Pro Bowl, were looking at an all-star game between the top guys in the NFL and the top guys in the AFL. The conference championships contributed to this fund, the Super Bowl contributed to this fund, and of course, the Pro Bowl contributed to this fund as well. Back in 1963, the Pro Bowl contributed $15,000, which surely went up in the decade and a half since. Now, it might not mean a lot today, since most of the guys playing in the Pro Bowl are already making millions of dollars and are well set for life after this. But around this time, in an era where players weren't making a lot of money, and a lot of them had to work jobs in the off-season, that's why the Pro Bowl was a huge deal back then, or at least one of the reasons why. The more high-quality players that participate, the more interest and revenue the game is likely to receive, which leads to more money getting put in the pension fund. Pretty simple math, right? But what happens when you take away the pension? What happens when the owners lie to you and decide not to put the Pro Bowl money in the pension fund as was supposed to be the case? You get the mess that we're about to witness. I think it's safe to say that the NFL and the NFLPA have never really gotten along. When are they not clashing with each other? And sure enough, this clash was on display here. Because according to Ed Garvey, the executive director of the NFLPA, the owners just stopped contributing to the pension plan. If we go back in time 2 years to 1974, that was when the players held a strike. Well, the strike got resolved before the start of the regular season, and while no preseason games outside of the College All-Star Game got canceled, the players were playing in 1974 and 1975 without a collective bargaining agreement. And with no CBA, there were no talks of pensions, nor was any money put into the pension fund from the Pro Bowl the year before. Garvey, along with Kermit Alexander, the president of the NFLPA, were furious about this. As Alexander said, if the Pro Bowl receipts are supposed to go to the pension plan, and there is no active plan, then why should the players play? Garvey then added, you can't go on telling people they have disability benefits and death benefits when they don't. And he was not even the slightest bit optimistic that the owners were going to add to the plan. Tensions were already high between the two sides. Just 2 weeks before, at a party prior to Super Bowl X, Garvey got served with legal papers by the NFL for a completely separate incident. Now, Commissioner Pete Rozelle tried to save face, saying that if the game wasn't played, then the league would be losing a significant revenue stream, and thus, less money would be going into the pension fund. But it was clear that the Players Association was upset about this, especially after comments made by Sergeant Karch, the head of the NFL Management Council, who said that until there was an agreement, there were not going to be any contributions made to the pension fund. In fact, there were even some talks about getting the Pittsburgh Steelers and Dallas Cowboys to boycott the Super Bowl so that the league would contribute to the pension fund. However, the association decided not to do this for a few reasons. Number one, Garvey said that the game meant a lot to those players, and you don't want to distract them and interfere with it through litigation and boycotts. Number 2, and perhaps most importantly, the optics of this would have looked very bad, especially after 2 strikes in the last half-decade. It would not look good at all for the players if they decided to go this route. Most of the fans would have sided with the owners. But the Pro Bowl, a game where the only reason to play it is for the pension fund? Yeah, we can go this route. And just like that, the game was in danger of not being played. The Pro Bowl was supposed to be held on January 26, 1976. On January 21st, the status of this game was still in serious limbo. The 80 players participating in the Pro Bowl met with Garvey to talk about the pension plan and whether or not to proceed with the game. The NFL was trying to keep calm, with one spokesperson after the first practice for the game saying we couldn't have had a better first day of work. The players are having a good time, working toward Monday night. Meanwhile, the NFLPA was debating whether to go through with the game, and the ticket sales were plummeting. This was the first ever Pro Bowl held in New Orleans, and you don't have to worry about the weather or anything like that since the game was indoors at the Louisiana Superdome. Yet in the carnivorous stadium that held over 73,000 fans, only 25,000 tickets were sold days before the game. News had gotten out about the boycott. Instead of the phone lines being flooded with people wanting tickets to the All-Star game, the lines were being flooded with people asking for refunds, or asking if they get their money back if the game got cancelled. It was that bad. However, the good news for the NFL and the future of this game was that it seemed like Garvey and the players were not in sync with each other in the slightest bit. Because even though Garvey was adamant about the NFL screwing players over with pensions and wanting to boycott the game, the players were speaking publicly about how they wanted to play. Quarterback Jim Hart said he didn't know the particulars of the negotiation, and that he just wanted to play. Safety Cliff Harris said that even though he wanted to know what was going on, and even though he was exhausted having played in the Super Bowl just 2 weeks before, he also wanted to play. And running back Terry Metcalf said that everyone was planning on playing. Otherwise, they wouldn't have come down to New Orleans in the first place. Still, Garvey met with the players to present them with the facts and have them make the final call on whether or not to play the game. If they boycotted, then it would have been the second All-Star Game boycott in pro football. Coincidentally, that one took place in New Orleans as well, as players boycotted the 1965 AFL All-Star Game due to racial discrimination faced by players in the city. The game was eventually moved to Houston. If you want to learn more about that, Full Color Football is a really good documentary on the history of the AFL that has some good nuggets about the boycott. So what did the players decide to do here? Well, as you can probably expect based on the title of this video, and what I said earlier about Mike Borella, there was not going to be a boycott. The game was on.
Terry Bradshaw and Fran Tarkenton square off against each other as all-stars of the National Football League meet in the 6th annual Pro Bowl game, tomorrow night on ABC.
Of the 80 players who were invited to the game, 50 of them decided that it wasn't even worth it to take a vote. They wanted to play in the game, and they'd solve their issues with the NFL later on. Garvey said on the decision by the players, it boiled down to a question of who would be hurt if the game was canceled, and a question of whether a cancellation would have had enough impact on the owners. Following a 90-minute meeting, the players determined that even though they didn't agree with what the NFL was doing to them, they didn't want to hurt the fans, and that it would have been a very bad look to travel all the way to New Orleans just to decide that they didn't want to play in the game. The fans would have been hurt more than the owners. Now that's not to say that the players weren't upset. Vikings defensive tackle Alan Page said that he wanted to see more communication from the owners and the league office, so that they wouldn't be kept in the dark on such matters. And Cardinals offensive lineman Tom Banks said that the league was being unfair, and that the league was not acting in good faith. But despite their frustrations, the players decided that this would not be the best course of action to take. And with that, the game went on as planned. What followed was one of the most exciting Pro Bowls of all time. Even though not many people saw it in the stands since ticket sales lagged considerably due to the game being in limbo for the week before, for those who did, and for those who saw it on ABC, they were treated to an unbelievable showcase. You had the NFC taking it by a final score of 23-20 after coming back from the dead late in the fourth quarter thanks to some incredible play by Mike Borella, who, as I said in the introduction, had absolutely no business whatsoever playing in this game. And eventually, the players would get what they want, as future games wound up contributing to the pension fund. The Pro Bowl set to take place in 2021 was not held due to the pandemic. Since the Pro Bowl became a thing in 1950, it marked the first time ever that there was no Pro Bowl played. However, the 1976 Pro Bowl was dangerously close to not taking place either. The show went on when all was said and done, but it was awfully close to not, because even in a game that means nothing on the score sheet, at the end of the day, money still talks. Get your official Jaguar Gear 9 merchandise by going to jg9shop.com, and be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot, And be sure to check out Twitch every Monday and Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL trivia and win cash prizes. Link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at JRGamer9 and subscribe to 60-Second NFL History on YouTube. To see highlight videos of players throughout the history of the NFL, subscribe to JG9 Highlights. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.